Husker fans, Sam McKewon with the Omaha World-Herald and Omaha.com. This is the Three Keys to Nebraska, Michigan. Hello, everybody. It's big game week, and Nebraska football appears to be rounding the corner into something big and important. And they have the kind of team in town that if Nebraska can win this game, it changes not only the tenor of this season, but it could change the tenor of the Frost era. Yeah, would you love to have a couple of games where you knew you were going to be a 10 to 15 point favorite so that you could build on the Northwestern momentum before you played a team like Michigan? Sure, but that's just not the hand that Nebraska seems to be dealt in the Big Ten, especially this year. They're going to play Michigan on Saturday in a couple of weeks. In about a month, they're going to play Ohio State. They're probably going to be in the top 10. Then in a couple more weeks after that, they're going to play Iowa, and they're going to be in the top 10. Now, there's an advantage to that. Nebraska has 3 opportunities to make a statement win as this season goes on, and then they have other opportunities to win games. The first game on that list, the statement game, is Saturday night against Michigan. The Wolverines are undefeated. They're 5-0. They're number 9 in the country. They have not really been tested with the exception of one game against Rutgers that they won 20-13. That was an interesting game in the fact that the Wolverines led 20-3 at halftime, and then they held on for dear life because Rutgers controlled the entire second half of that football game, and Rutgers probably should have won it. They had a number of situations within the red zone where they just didn't execute. But they had Michigan on the ropes, and I'll tell you what, the offense that's most like Nebraska's in the Big Ten, maybe other than Ohio State, would be Rutgers. And Nebraska's offense can have success on Saturday against Michigan, and that gets us to our first key. Win between the hash marks. What do I mean by that? Well, here's what I mean. Michigan's defense is not the biggest defense in the Big Ten by any means. You're going to see a huge defense when Nebraska plays Wisconsin, and quite honestly, Nebraska's defense is pretty big. They're pretty big and they're pretty physical. Michigan's a little smaller and they're a little quicker, and man, can they run. They can run sideline to sideline, and they can get vertical on ball carriers and get them behind the line of scrimmage. Dax Hill is a guy to watch. So is Josh Ross, who is a smaller but rangy middle linebacker, and so he'll be an interesting guy to watch. But here's the thing. I think Nebraska can run right at Michigan. Not for 400 yards, not for 300 yards, maybe not even for 200 yards. But I think they can get to 150 by going downhill, right down Broadway, on Michigan's interior linemen, who aren't bad, but they're not great. I wouldn't describe them as good as maybe Wisconsin's interior linemen or perhaps what Nebraska will see when they play Iowa. You're not going to necessarily shove them 5 yards off the ball, but you can block them. And I think Nebraska's got a chance if they can get downhill early. They develop that play, and then they get the triple option going off of it or a read option. There's some of those lead plays that Adrian Martinez really likes. Michigan does a good job of running under blocks or running over blocks, okay? They're fast. So if Nebraska tries to hit Martinez on the edge a lot, I fear that Michigan's going to run under and over blocks, and they're going to get there and they're going to tackle them for losses. But when you go right at Michigan, when you go right down Broadway, I think you can gain 3, 4, 5 yards, and that way it's a little bit like Oklahoma. And so I think Nebraska's got to, yes, they've got to use that triple option. They've been using it all year. It's very effective, but let's see how they use with the dive there. That inside zone, maybe an outside zone. Maybe they get in the pistol and they run it right downhill with some pullers. They have to try to physically overwhelm Michigan because I think Michigan's speed is pretty elite on defense. It's pretty impressive. Let's go to the second key. This is 50-50 balls, and we're going to flip it now. I feel like Michigan's run offense is not bad, but Nebraska has spent several years now getting ready for run offenses just like the Wolverines, right? They've had a lot of practice here. They've had a lot of practice. They had a lot of practice against Wisconsin. They've had a lot of practice against Iowa. They've had a lot of practice just a couple of weeks ago against Michigan State. I would say Michigan State's run offense worries you just as much as Michigan's. Michigan's going to load up on tight ends. They're going to have pullers. They're going to do a little bit of zone stuff, but they love to get downhill and smack you in sort of a gap scheme. Nebraska has been spending years preparing for that. I suspect that Nebraska is going to have success slowing Michigan's run game down. And Cade McNamara, he's not a mobile guy. He's not an Adrian Martinez or a Noah Vedral, so he's not going to be running for 95 yards. So what's Michigan going to do to get chunk plays? I suspect what they're going to do is they're going to try to go after Nebraska's corners. Now, Michigan's receivers are pretty good on those 50-50 balls downfield. They do a nice job of adjusting in the air. And Cade McNamara doesn't have a strong arm, but he throws a catchable ball. Between 30 and 50 yards, he does a nice job of throwing it up the sidelines to a place where those Michigan guys can get it, and that's where Nebraska has to win. Cam Taylor-Britt, Quentin Newsome, Braxton Clark, maybe a safety. Those guys are all going to be tested. I suspect that Michigan's way of trying to get chunk plays won't be in the run game. Not that they won't have success there, but I think the chunk plays are more likely to come on those 50-50 balls outside the numbers or outside the hash marks where Michigan's going to try to throw it downfield. Against Rutgers, again, Rutgers kind of screwed the game up in the first half because their defense played this sort of goofy 7-man on the line kind of thing that effectively stopped Michigan's run, but it left a lot of these slant passes right behind the linebackers wide open. I don't think Nebraska is going to play that kind of defense. I think they're going to try to stop Michigan's run game with their usual defensive style, and then they'll have guys dropping into those zones so that those slant passes aren't easy to make hay on. So I think Michigan's going to have to throw it deep. It's what they had to do against Wisconsin, and it was successful at times. And so we'll have to see if Nebraska's corners are up for the challenge. So I think that's something to watch on the other side of the ball. Third key, play up on special teams. Michigan has a strength. They have a huge advantage in this game on special teams if you're looking at it on paper. They have a good punter. They have a great place kicker. They have a good return game. They have a better X in every phase of the game than Nebraska, with maybe the exception of kickoff specialists. So Michigan has a distinct advantage here. If they're able to flex that advantage to, let's say, 100 to 150 hidden yards or 3 to 7 points, I don't love Nebraska's chances in this game. So if there was a game where Nebraska had to play up on special teams, it had to make its field goals, it had to punt reasonably well, it had to field their punts, which I think with Oliver Martin coming back, that's probably going to happen. This is that game, because I think Michigan's going to be very solid there. They've been very disciplined all season. You can throw penalties in there too, even though that's not on the board. I think Nebraska can't go into this game and commit, 8 or 9 penalties. I think they got to play smart. I think they have to avoid personal fouls. Michigan does a pretty good job of avoiding personal fouls. And so we'll see how this all comes out. Special teams to some degree is about overall team strength. I think Michigan has a little bit more, and discipline, which I think Michigan has shown to have a little bit more. That said, Nebraska's going to have a crowd, and it's going to be, as Danny Nee used to say, an electric zoo. And that's what I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be absolutely live in there. It's going to be unlike any atmosphere we've seen since either 2016 Oregon or 2014 Miami. That helmet in that stadium, Michigan's helmet in that stadium, will get people going. I'm sure the students will have some choice words for Michigan's team and for Jim Harbaugh and all those things. And so I think it's going to be a really, really fun atmosphere, and Nebraska can leverage that to 3 to 7 points. I think that can play to their advantage. I think playing at night can play to their advantage because Michigan has to sit around all day, whereas Nebraska can kind of be a little bit more familiar in its environment. What's going to happen? It's hard to say. I like Nebraska's chances to win this game if they do those 3 things. If they get the ball downhill, win between the hash marks, between the tackles. If they're able to keep Michigan from hitting 2 or 3 of those 50-50 balls, and then they play up on special teams. Of the 3 keys, the third one is the iffiest. Let's be honest. Nebraska has not shown an ability to be consistent in this area for some time. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens. I kind of like Nebraska to win this game. I think it's going to be close, and if the Huskers do win it, it's going to change everything that we say and think about this season and about the Frost era. Yeah, it's really that big of a game. All right, this is the 3 keys. I'm Sam McKewo'n with the Omaha World-Herald, omaha.com, and huskerextra.com.